Do you believe in soulmates? This is the story of mine. His name is Joe, and I met him when we were 12 years old. My childhood friend introduced us. He was her cousin. This was Joe. And this was me, Kimmers. I'll never forget how my heart felt when I first met Joe. I was about 12, and I felt it for the rest of my life. Unknowingly, he stole my heart with that smile and those eyes. He was unlike anyone I had ever met. I couldn't explain it to someone if I tried or wish it away. It gripped me. Little did I know it was the beginning of a long, emotional, and complicated but beautiful story. I could have never imagined how the chapters would unfold. The truth is, life rarely happens the way we wish or think it should. Our destiny and fate are tangled into God's plans, no matter how we feel it's random and seems to make no sense. I guess I've learned that the pain teaches us things about ourselves and life we can't learn any other way. So this is our story. I was so excited for my friend's 8th grade graduation party at her house. They had music and it was set up for us kids in the garage. I got to dance with Joe to the Bee Gees' How Deep Is Your Love. And I was on a cloud for days after, writing in my little blue plaid diary about how I just couldn't forget about this boy. I couldn't stop thinking about him. My friend told me Joe and his friends used to ride their bikes to the Old Orchard Mall nearer to his house. I don't know if I ever told my friends why we had to ride 8 miles to that mall instead of the one closer to us. But we went several times. I hoped I would see Joe even just once. But sadly, I never did. I originally chose University of Iowa for college, but decided to go to Alma College in Michigan. I was unaware that Joe had chosen Iowa, and once again our paths wouldn't cross just yet. But then finally, I would see him after waiting almost a decade. My friend had her wedding back in Illinois, and she told me her cousin Joe would be there, so I brought out my sewing machine and made a beautiful pink taffeta mermaid gown just for that night when I would have the chance to dance with Joe again. A decade since our last dance, and I was just as excited as I was back then. Just like Molly Ringwald felt in 16 Candles, I worried that I just wasn't pretty enough for someone so handsome. Yeah, just like the movie 16 Candles, he was my Jake Ryan. And the story didn't go exactly the same, but it's our story. We danced and talked, but Joe was in a relationship with another girl and was still in college at University of Iowa. I was disappointed, but continued on with my life, became a flight attendant after college, ended up marrying and having 2 children. My marriage ended in divorce. I never forgot about Joe, though, and often wondered what happened to him. In 2006, after my divorce, I ran into Joe when my friend's father passed away, and we spoke at his wake. This time the encounter found us both single, and we ended up dating, and we fell in love. It was perfect in so many ways. It was like my dream finally came true, and I wanted to be with him forever. We were together for 3 years, and despite all the good times and unmistakable love we had for each other, there were several issues that contributed to our separation. We had different life goals and needed things we couldn't give each other at that point. It was a tug of war, and it hurt. It hurt us both so much. I had children to raise under very stressful, difficult circumstances. We argued and made up many times. We tried to be just friends and had dinner, hung out, even went to a wedding together, but it just wasn't working. The arguments and tension became worse, and the time apart increased. We sometimes said very angry things to try to purposely hurt each other. There was just no way to make this work, so we tried to let go. He tried harder than I did to keep contact and connect in the years that followed, But regrettably, my heart became hardened as self-defense mechanism, I guess. I never imagined, though, that his health would take such a drastic turn for the worse. Joe called me after about 5 years ago. He had called a few times for rides to the ER because he wasn't feeling right. His health started to decline and he ended up on dialysis. I suggested my son go work with him in 2022 at his job, as he was short-handed and he was getting less able to lift and keep up with the physical demands of the job. The business went under a year later and Joe's health declined even more. I had tried to convince myself and everyone around me that I didn't love him anymore. I built a wall around my heart because of a broken dream, and I hurt him by telling him I couldn't be with him anymore because I didn't love him. Joe didn't give up trying to get my ice wall to melt. After moving out of his apartment near me and moving in with family, his health was declining as he wasn't taking care of himself, succumbing to loneliness and depression. That put him into a nursing home rehabilitation facility. I was not aware of the pneumonia and COVID, the constant setbacks, hospital visits, and the very fragile state of his health until I went to see him. Each time my heart ached as I left, and he sat alone in the wheelchair in the gazebo outside. After several visits, Joe decided to try one more time to kiss me, and this time I didn't turn away like many times before. I kissed him back and we held each other tightly. He was frail, but his arms held me like I remembered. I felt the rush of warmth in my heart. I did love him. God knew it all along, and what happened next was nothing short of a miracle. A week after I saw Joe, he texted me that he was in isolation for shingles, and within a couple days he was rushed to the hospital as his brother found him unresponsive in his room because the facility misread his charts and gave him an overdose of a shingles medication, a dose meant for a non-dialysis patient, too much for his kidneys to handle. I went to see him and it was very bad. It honestly looked to all of us that this was it. I was leaving for my trip to Tennessee. It was a long-planned trip, and I was leaving in 2 days, and I was thinking I was going to get the dreaded call during that week and a half away. I went to say my goodbyes. I told him I loved him, but didn't think he even really knew that I was there. I had to go back to work fighting the tears. And I thought, dear God, how could this be happening? It can't end like this. We left for the road trip to Tennessee on September 21st, 2024 at 4 a.m. I drove with my dog in the car, following my son-in-law, daughter, and grandson. I could barely focus on navigation. My mind was racing, my heart was pounding, and my eyes were so sore from crying so much. As we left Illinois, I prayed, talked to God, and pleaded for another chance to tell Joe I loved him. I realized I always did, and needed forgiveness for being so angry and unforgiving. The wall that I had built around my heart was crumbling. As I crossed the border into Tennessee, my range of emotions was so intense, and I felt so fragile. Tennessee is my heaven on earth. I missed it with a homesickness, as it's where my heart knows I belong. I waited so long for this trip. I was so happy and grateful, yet my heart was hurting. I said, Jesus, you can't take Joe away. Please don't take him. The little town of Jellicoe, Tennessee was coming up, and it was where my daddy and I stayed on a road trip in the early 90s. He was the only man I ever truly loved besides Joe. I cried as I saw the Jellicoe sign and the Cumberland Mountains around me. The memories came flooding back, and just then the unimaginable happened. My phone rang, and the Bluetooth screen in my car said it was Joe. I answered in disbelief and heard his voice and started sobbing, trying to keep my eyes on my family's car in front of me, leading the way. Joe was awake, calling me from his hospital bed. Jesus had answered my prayers. I cried, "Please don't leave me, Joe. I need you and I love you so much." We apologized for hurting each other, and then he asked me if I would marry him, and I said yes. When I got back to Illinois after my trip to Tennessee, I couldn't wait to get to the hospital to see Joe. I told him that I want to help take care of him, cook for him, and help him get strong again. I didn't want him to go through this alone ever again. I held my hand, and he played his favorite song by Jelly Roll and sang, "I'm not okay, but it's all going to be all right," as he drifted off to sleep. No words can express how grateful my heart felt at that moment for second chances and God's mercy and grace. Joe is in a new nursing recovery home. The challenges are many. Some days are good, and some are not good at all. There's hospital visits for blood transfusions. There's days when dialysis leaves him weak and tired. There's days we can snuggle in the small bed and watch TV, and he can play old songs and sing to me, and some days he can only sleep because he's so weak. I cook and I bring food, help with showers and personal care. He tries to do physical therapy and eat well to gain back weight and strength. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. He needs a kidney, and unfortunately, I am A positive and he's O negative, so I cannot give him one of mine. We've been looking into the kidney swap program that could expedite him getting one. So if I give one to mine, to someone who has my blood type, they in turn get one with the blood type that he needs quicker. We have no guarantees we will have a wedding like other people. We can only hope and pray for that. Each day, we are just grateful for the little things, grateful for another day together. If only we could turn back time. I guess one thing I would say to anyone about life is, do not let pride ever get in your way of loving someone. Humility is everything. So is forgiveness. Moments we can never get back sear the heart like a hot iron. Life's unpredictable and fleeing. Nothing matters more than love. When you have someone that when you look into each other's eyes, you feel it in your soul, and you don't even have to say a word, it's unspoken. I love you with all my heart. That's a gift from God. We have that. And I know I could never find this kind of love again, even if I searched the whole world for the rest of my life. If there's one thing I'm sure of, I'm sure that he's always belonged with me. Joe is currently having very low hemoglobin levels despite the blood transfusions. And now after being able to go 2 weeks in between, he's now back in the hospital again. And there's no answers as to where the blood is going and why his hemoglobin levels keep dipping down. He is starting to become afraid of what this could mean, and so am I. We could use prayers, a lot of prayers. Being covered in prayer is such a powerful thing. As I've learned in life, prayer should be your first response and not your last resort. In the midst of darkness and pain, God is still good, and His hand is in everything, even when we don't understand. Any words of encouragement or correspondence, please send to joeandkimmers@gmail.com. Thank you for watching me, and please share this video. We're hoping for help and answers in this battle. We're praying for a kidney, and we're praying for many more days together. Whatever God could grant us, we'll be grateful for.